Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. In studio for the Elders podcast, we have Esther Muiru and Muiru, and she's the founder emeritus of Groots Kenya, a grassroots women's rights movement that gathers women from across Kenya to come together to improve their lives. And we're so excited to have her in studio because she's going to be speaking to us about how the women's rights movement started in Kenya, but more importantly about Beijing and the implications that Beijing had in the women's rights movement in Kenya and around the world. And she's a dear friend and a wonderful human being. So welcome, Esther, and really
Thank
excited to
you,
have you as one of our first guests on the Elders podcast. So tell us, maybe you can tell us a bit about who you are, what inspires you, what are the key moments in your life that brought you down this journey to be a grassroots women's rights organizer?
Hello, everyone. And I am very, very privileged to be here. Thank you for having me. It is an honor to catch up with you, Wairu. It's been a long, long time. And the beauty is all of us are out there doing what we love best.
Absolutely.
And so catching up,
Yeah.
it's always an honor and also to reflect what have we achieved in doing what we've been able to do. So I think your question just takes me back memory lane. So for many of the people that would be listening to this conversation, I am one of those people that were born in the 60s. Close to the 70s, but in the 60s. And so we are the team that grew, the generation that our parents were part of the colonial war. And so if you think about Kenyan history, so we were the generation that were brought by the parents that had really been battered.
Yes. Yes.
So, and those ones who had lost their parents in the war, they had grown and as teenagers and as adults fighting for the freedom of this country. So we were brought up by parents that really had been dehumanized by what they had experienced, and that has shaped a lot of our life. And more specific to my life is that I am born and brought up in Limuru, which is part of the highlands of this country. And every time people think about Limuru, what they have is all these manicured tea plantations and the beautiful grasslands where we are feeding exotic cows and the wealthy, and that expands all the way to the UN. And that's what people have in Limuru. But that's not our life. But the history of Limuru is that when the colonialists, actually when the missionaries first came, and they arrived in this part of the world, they settled first in Limuru. Limuru is the place where the missionaries decided how to propagate for us cash crop. And so what they did, the missionaries, is to tell the indigenous people that we're going to be teaching you on how to make use of your land, the entire land use issues. And so they consolidated the pieces of land that the indigenous people had, and they talked to us about, or our forefathers, on how to live in the less fertile part of the land. And so we were pushed in the settlements that are between the Maasai land. That is, as you go down the Rift Valley, and most people know it as Deya. And the Limuru itself. So most of our people eventually ended up in Deya. But as they were consolidating the land to teach the natives on how to be able to cultivate and utilize the land better, the land became eventually the government of the of UK.
Yes.
When we became the colony of the United Kingdom. And so the entire land became their land.
Their land, yeah.
And so our parents and our grandparents then had to live where they had to live. They were part of the big people that were in the crave for the land, but they never got it back.
Yes, yes.
So as we grew up, and so like for me, my history is my grandparents, my father, when they were young, then they were pushed after the detention to Kericho. So by the time he came back, his father had died and his people had subdivided the land that was left for them, and they didn't have much land. So you see, Limuru has these 3 colonial villages. One is Rironi, Kameredo, and the other Kwambera. And so everybody from Limuru and all over the country who found there after the lad came back, and they found that their land had been subdivided by the family who were there.
Yes, yes.
And they had assumed these people who either were the last one to come out of the prisons or who went into to detention and came later, or really disappeared, like my father's family. After this, they disappeared in Kericho and they were burning charcoal there and making a living. They would be given a piece of land there. Each of them have an acre.
Okay.
So it's a really mixed crop of everybody in Kenya that who did not get land. In Kikuyu, we have a very bad name for those people. So almost everybody in my village was actually, you call them a laborer.
Yes, yes.
In this beautiful manicured land. So we lived our life cultivating this land, and that's how we earned our living. So we all grew out of poverty. We were so, like everybody. So for us, it really didn't matter then because all of us were like that. But there were a few people, the teachers, people who had gotten into the government. Yes. And so we would also work in their house. So I lived my life as either a farm laborer or as a house help. But one thing that I like about Limuru is also where the missionaries set up the beautiful school, Loletos, and a lot of churches. Yes. And so the nuns in the Catholic Church always taught us about inequality when we were basically young children.
That's fascinating.
And I was very, very involved in the church. So I was taught about inequality. I went to Loleto High School. So we were taught about inequality. So I kept realizing and understanding our history. There was already inequality. So by the time I was growing up, I knew we were not poor because our parents didn't work hard. But I knew there was inequality, but I didn't understand the depth. And so what happened is when I went to University of Nairobi, so I went in the old system of education where I would go up to Form 4, then Form 5 and 6.
You're the boom people.
Yes. Oh, yeah. We got the boom. Oh, yes. 50, 60. 50, 80. Sorry, it was 50, 80. 5,080. I educated my sister. We would do great things for our families. 50, 80 was a lot of money for the boom. And so anyway, for my education, so after Form 6, I was admitted to go and do double maths. So I was in campus in Chiromo. Prestigious to be part of the sciences. And I looked and I said, this is not what exactly I really wanted. I wanted to work where I'm actually dealing with this inequality, dealing with poverty. And then I would find people that I had come up from 5 and 6 telling me they're in a place called humanities and they're walking in the streets. They are rescuing commercial sex workers. They are going to talk to them at night. They're going to rescue street children. They are writing. And I say, this is what I actually came here to do. I'm not here in this place where I'm doing mathematics to work in the bank. Because I already gotten a job in the Barclays Bank, because after Form 6, you'd get a job. So I had already gotten a job and I did not take that job. So I'm in the university to deal with inequality. So I knew that's what I wanted. And I said, this math will only take me to the bank and it will not help me to do the... So I actually asked the dean if I could cross over to humanities because I had heard. We didn't live in a place where anyone taught us about what you came to university. We thought coming to the university, whatever you study, you get out of poverty. So that was my motivation. So I really understood poverty pretty well. And so then I went, of course, to the humanities and I ended up doing sociology and economics. So that really settled me. If I went back to the university, I would still do sociology and economics.
What did you like so much about it?
Because you interact with people. In sociology, we were taught about inequality, and one of the book that I loved very much, it's the economic book that taught us about how Europe had developed Africa. So you can imagine where I come from about the United Kingdom and coming, taking our land. So for me, it was reality.
resonated.
I loved that book. I read it over and over. And it was an economics book, international economics. So how Europe had developed Africa. So I was in love with that book. So for me, that I was home. I was home. And the beauty with the university then, the professors were kind of our parents. They talked to us as if we were their children, and we got very well nurtured. And so I became, of course, I needed money to survive, understanding that I come from a poor background. Any coin was made a lot of sense and I would pursue it. So I became a research assistant at the university to many professors. And so it happened by the time that the country, people were preparing to go to Beijing. I already knew who were the professors preparing way in 1993, 1994.
Hey, what were people going to Beijing to do?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I mean, I must say that the fact that people know there was a Beijing conference is the greatest achievement, I think, about that conference. Because the Beijing conference is like any other international conference.
Yes.
Many conferences happen in this world.
Absolutely.
But why are people very aware about the Beijing conference? Because there was the first UN conference on women.
Yes.
There was the second one, UN Women Conference. There was the third one that actually happened in Nairobi in 1985. And there is this one that happened in Beijing. So how come people know about the fourth one and not any other conferences? And they keep happening every year. There is an international conference, even on women. But it's the significant part of this conference because it was the time that actually the world realized they had to have an international agreement that first of all would deal squarely on poverty and issues of gender inequality. At that point, people had tried to get some frameworks like gender mainstreaming, women's empowerment. It wasn't working. But there was a crave to see how do we transform the society and transform the society forever and deal with the issues of inequality, particularly for women and girls in all their diversities, particularly when it comes to issues of gender-based violence, girls' education, access control and ownership of land and natural resources, issues of economic justice. People had already come to realize the interconnection of all these issues. And so people were not going to deal with conferences that were dealing with one issue. And this is what is most significant about the 1995 UN Women Conference, popularly known as Beijing Conference, and came up with this. It had there is a Beijing platform for action, which has 12 critical issues, including at that time, we knew that there was climate change. But how did I end up being there? So, because I was in a conference in 1995.
Wow. Actually, you're one of the few people I know who are in the conference.
I was there and I was buried 25 years.
Amazing.
But coming back to what I just said is that I was very involved in voluntary work with professors, but if I got some little money, I was very happy, or as a research assistant. So I was very, very privileged because by 1993, I had left university and I was lucky I got a job at the Ministry of Local Government. And I was attached to a project that was funded by the Dutch government. So we had a lot of money to do the projects. And when I was there, so we actually, the Ministry of Local Government then, the Urban Development Department is the department that pioneered municipal reform, what you call now the county government or devolved government. So I saw it grow, I saw it discuss. So my role as an employee was community development, making sure that the community's voice is integrated as we thought through about the environmental plans for the new municipal reforms we wanted. So I was working with women all over this country. I was working with mayors. I was working with the town clerk. At the age of 27, I was actually a secretary of the steering committee members for permanent secretaries in this country.
Wow.
I just wish I knew how to steal land. Perhaps I would have gotten a lot of
Well,
land.
I'm glad you
You're
didn't know.
glad I didn't. I thank God I didn't. Yeah, but literally that's how I. So because of my link with this project, we had a lot of video clips we had made, and I would bring them to University of Nairobi, where it held hundreds of women preparing and confessing what to take to Beijing.
Yes.
So I would bring these TV tubes with the clips and cassettes for people to watch. So people were excited. I mean, this was not a resource you would find. If we were not funded by the Dutch government with that kind of resources, I would have nothing to offer to the women in Kenya who are preparing to go to the Beijing conference. And so I became a resource, and people were very happy. And I would take notes in the conferences. I would, of course, interpret for them what these videos meant, why environmental plans were very, very useful. And I think the women who are leading the Beijing, the women in Kenya to go to Beijing, they found a very good KYM. So I actually was a KYM, Kadaya Mkono. I was happy. And they asked me, do you want to come? We like the way you're taking notes, the way you're doing all this. And of course, I got a ticket to go to Beijing, and I talked to my Dutch boss, and she said, oh my God, yes, we'll give you free 2 weeks of leave to go to Beijing. And I went to Beijing. That's how I ended up there.
How was Beijing?
And I tell young people, volunteering without any looking for the gains, because I was doing it out of passion, just to make sure that women understood, had a resource. In their breaks, they could come round and watch these beautiful videos on tighter hills in the coast of Nairobi, in Kisumu, where we've done these videos, and they enjoyed them very
And
much.
Esther, let me tell you, voluntarism is something that I think needs to come back into the discourse, because I think young people need to understand what voluntarism actually does. Amazing. So
yeah, and it's different from unpaid care.
Yeah,
because
it
people
is.
confuse unpaid care and volunteer work. These are two different things. I choose to volunteer. Unpaid care, I am pushed to do it because of my circumstances. These are two different things. But volunteer work is a gateway to success. So anyway, so how was Beijing? Of course, this was my second trip in my lifetime. I had made a small trip where actually was my first trip out of the world. No, I had actually a trip with my husband in 1994, which I hadn't even, I couldn't understand how to get into a plane, but this was really the epitome of my trip. So I went there. And for me, of course, I was young. I didn't have much expectation. I was just excited. I was going to a conference with so many women that by now I knew it was significant. I'm forever grateful to the women of this country that allowed me to go.
Hey, tell me some of them.
And one of what, so there is Lilian Mwaura, who is very much alive. She's a lawyer. She was the heading the civil society group that was going to Beijing. Nyifa Mwendwa, people know about Nyifa Mwendwa. And Nyifa Mwendwa was heading the entire Kenyan delegation.
Wow.
But there was a civil society arm that was headed by the Lilian Mwaura. And then I had met a wonderful girl who became my lifetime friend. And actually, we are very good, great families. I met her at the university. She's called Cecilia Njenga Kinuthia. She's the director of international intergovernmental processes at the UNFCCC.
Wow.
So when we go to climate change and we are negotiating, and the outcome, she's the person responsible for that. So very big. So she was working for the Environmental Liaison International Center, ELCI, and she really had held me to this. And I'm forever grateful to these women and many others. And so So those are some of the ones that I can tell you. There was people like Professor Kabera who were there. I was with Olive Mugenda, who is from University of Kenyatta University. People will know her from Kenyatta University. And my life with Olive is very interesting because we went on the same flight and we passed through India to go to Beijing. Both of us had never, I don't know whether she traveled, but I can tell you we were very naive. And so we go to India and we were held and we had to stay overnight in a cell.
What?
Because we did not have the transit visa. We didn't know we needed to have a transit visa. And we slept in a cell together with them. But I was still excited. I was traveling. For me, I wasn't shocked. I wasn't depressed. I was traveling. I was in India. That was the most interesting. Now I look back today, I would be very stressed to stay in a cell.
So how did you get out of the cell?
No, we were very innocent. So we were just explaining as we are going to Beijing conference, the UN conference. You don't know it's happening. It's happening. So that's where we are going. So I think they also found us very naive and they released us and we went into the next. And so Beijing was very funny because, and this is where I tell young people, we've come so far and we are literally riding on shoulders of people who've done a lot of work. Today, we usually go to international conferences and I'm in the same hotel with the minister or even in the same meeting with the minister. In Beijing, they were there where the governments were hosted, which is Beijing, where they were meeting. And when the civil society were meeting, it was a whole 100 kilometers apart. We were meeting in a place called Huairu. And that is where every civil society was.
100 kilometers from the main event?
From the main event. And it was a university in China that in this Huairu city that was under construction. So it was unfinished. And all of us, we were sitting like 6 people. I remember sitting with people that are most senior women I know today. I didn't realize who they were then. If I tell you their name, because we were sleeping on the floor, on the mattresses, all of us, 5 people in a university upcoming dormitory, not finished, no windows. That's where we were staying. The entire civil society of the world was staying in this university that was incomplete. Members of parliament who were not part of the delegation, ministers who were not part of delegations, executive directors of big organizations all over the world. I'm not talking about Kenyan. All of us were staying in the same place.
What?
Yes. But anyway, what happened is that I was given some role because I have a ticket. There's no free lunch. So one of my assignment was to support Professor Wangari Maathai. May the Lord rest her soul in peace. And one of my role was to make sure that before she did her conference, which was still very famous globally, she had many speaking slots, that I made sure the room is clean, it's cleared, and then I would take notes and I would submit them. And then, of course, I would be given another assignment. And of course, I had time to walk around and also participate and listen. And during that time, I would go to one tent in the middle of the university. They did not have any, they were fabricated rooms that were the meeting rooms were. But this tent was in the field where there were many kiosks where people were eating from. But it was a very significant tent. And what amazed me, remember I said I come from poverty, and all of us are workers in farmland. So you can imagine how we are very tattered people. And these women looked like my mother. But they are speaking, they're in this tent, they are discussing, they are talking. Then in the plenaries, the rooms where I'm getting the ministers, the PSs, the dignitaries are in the ones in those plenary rooms that are, of course, prefabricated. And to me, it was clear that in those plenary rooms, I had people who had what it takes. They already had their basic needs. But they're the people who are talking about the issues of lack of water, no education for the children, health, difficult, like health infrastructure is bad, no running water in houses. But I could tell these people they have houses, water in their houses. They are from Muthaiga, from where, of course, never lived in my village. You know what I mean? So they live in Kirishwa, they live in Kirimani, wherever we know, even then. So, and then I go to this tent. These women are very articulate on the issues that they need, but they are the ones who are living these issues, but they are not in the plenary. So for me, it was clear, they are left in this margin of the tent. But they were better off by my family than my people in the village who had never come. So I was really mesmerized. I was.
So it's like you're in one same place, but there's two different conversations happening.
But I'm so happy because these people had come to Beijing. And I wished that my mother and the likes of my mother were also here among them because they were sharing their experiences. It was a rich conversation. It was the true, actually, international conference. And I spent a lot of my time there. So when I was there, of course, I met 1, 2, 3 Kenyans, no grassroots women. I didn't meet any grassroots women. But Professor Wangari Maathai came coming to this tent. And a few other people that I knew another lady called Helen Waigumo. I met her there. I had never seen her. And so she would also come. And then I realized this tent was organized by a group called Groots International. So that time we didn't have any emails. We didn't have, the kind of communication. And I wrote a very long letter and I said, hello, thank you. I was very happy to be in the tent. I got you. You give me your contact. I want to start something in Kenya like this, where grassroots can be speaking like the way I saw them in China. And so I got in touch with Helen Waigumo and we started talking about this, how she had known about this organization. I had never noticed. So they called me back on a phone and they told me, by the way, Groots International was started in Kenya during the 1985 meeting by 5 women. And Professor Wangari Maathai was one of them. I was like, what a connection. So now remember, now I know Wangari Maathai personally because I was almost her PA, one of our PA in Beijing. And I called her and I went and she agreed to me to go and see. And I told her about this and I told her I wanted to start. And I think I was so young. She looked at me and like really treated me like her child. And she said, I was part of starting the Groots International, but unfortunately, I never got a chance to start it in Nairobi, Kenya, because at that time I was also championing the Green Belt movement. So she told me, are you ready to just take it off? And that's how it started.
Wow, amazing. Like, I can't even believe I didn't even expect that connection. I didn't see that coming.
She became my first mentor.
Oh, how was that really? How's Professor Wangari Maathai for those who didn't know her or didn't have the chance to meet her?
I think what I know about Professor Wangari Maathai, she always talked whatever she thought that was right. And that for me is one principle that I wish all of us can learn from such women and such leaders. And she never feared to talk about what she believed was right. And I think she was ahead of her age because she did not only deal with things that were happening then, but she was also looking at the future of the world. And that's why she started talking about an environmental conversation, conservation before actually climate change hit us so hard. Remember when she kept on saying that the environment is very, it doesn't forget and it's misgiving. That you destroy it, it will hit back. We didn't know what it meant. Now, she was definitely ahead of her time. And remember, the Green Belt movement was actually begun as an opportunity to prevent the impact of climate change and food insecurity. She was really ahead of her time. And that's for me what I think she was, and we didn't take advantage of that properly because We did not allow her to become the leader who would have helped this country, but she served it well. So I would say those are the critical things I find with her, but she was very committed to the cause of sustainable development, gender equality, and justice. And that nobody will take away from her.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, okay, so there's the Beijing Platform for Action.
Yeah.
What are the key things that you came back with from Beijing as the women of who went there in Kenya? Because I remember there was this big uproar. I remember any woman who was misbehaving was told, Ulienda Beijing.
I know.
Did you go to Beijing?
Oh, yes.
But what is it about Beijing that actually made it that conference with that difference? What did it bring back, especially to the country? And
I would say the leaders then actually took the moment and utilized the moment. Like I said, it was a time that we understood that the interconnectivity of all the issues.
nowadays we would say intersectionality.
Intersectionality, yes. But before that, there was always sectoral development. If you remember when we read about our sectoral development plan of the 60s and the 70s, they were very linear.
Siloed, yes.
Yeah, and siloed. But we had now come at a time we were thinking about these things actually are so connected. And I think that's what Beijing delivered for gender equality and said all these issues are interconnected and we must deal with them. So when he talks about the 12 critical issues, which is about environment, it's about health, it's about education, it is about security, it's about, all the really basic things that we need for women and girls. They are there and very well articulated. And by the way, that is the reason there has never been another international women's conference, because there hasn't been an opportunity to develop a better plan than the Beijing Platform for Action. And the world, especially the feminists, the women's human rights, are determined not to allow the Beijing Platform for Action to be open for negotiation. Because what we know, it will be watered down. It is one of the strongest documents that if implemented, it actually would need no other framework. And that is the reason why we don't have until the 4th UN conference. And you see the series of the international international conference, whether it is the conference on climate change, it happens every year. Whether it's on the United Nations to combat desertification, it happens so often. Whether it is the one on World Urban Forum on human settlement, it happens every 2 years. So that series is known. For the women, it was every 5 years. Is it every 5 years? No, 10 years. So every 10 years. So it was 1975, 1965, I think 1975, 1985, and then 1995. And after that, we've not had. So all we do now is to say review of the Beijing Platform for Action.
Awesome. I'll also just go back to Groots and how you started organizing women, because I think that's such a fascinating story as well.
Yeah, now remember where I come from and my personal history. So it started by, and remember my working environment, I already have a platform to start from because I'm working with the Ministry of Local Government, the Urban Development Department, and I am actually employed to be in touch with community and bring their voices. So I started with those ones that I knew. And my work was to tell them about this Beijing conference and how I was inspired by having grassroots women. And one of the things that I had learned from Beijing is that for you to be able to be impactful is coming together, making sure that you understand your own living environment. You as a right holder, understanding your responsibility and understanding the duty bearer's responsibility. And only then can you be able to actually advocate for anything and claim your rights and be able to make progress. And so Groots is actually organized about that. So I'll talk about this as a right holder. You are a right holder. Why are you a right holder? What are your responsibility? Who are your duty bearers? Map your duty bearers. And you can't do it alone. You have to organize, have a common voice. And Groots is embedded in that kind of strategy. So many communities doing that. I remember I come from a place where I understood inequality. I was very naive and I said, I don't want any donor money. Because
What?
donor money will help you. It will not help you to advance. Let's use our own money. And then I'm working with people living with poverty. So I was organizing. So my salary, and then I would pay for women when I need to buy them madazis, and I'm going to the communities when outside the work. And when I want to write something, I would pay for it. And it grew when I was still employed. And my boss, my Dutch boss, loved me so much. And she's still alive. She's called Ingrid Ducha. She's from the Netherlands. And I love her so much because she really nurtured me. And she said, Esther, now you cannot talk about this Beijing and Groots anymore at work. Every evening, I'll give you an hour. We think through, you download. Let's do a brochure so that you can explain this in a more systematic way. That's how we developed the first brochure. My boss. And so we had the first brochure, and then I had the way to give people. I didn't have to go speaking in slums, in the rural areas. Anytime I had an opportunity, I would give this, and I would photocopy. But then after 3 years, women would come to Nairobi. We used to be on Kainage Street, Sianda House, 7th floor. And we had an open office like here. We were all sitting here. And then women would know, hello, we are looking for Esther Muiru from Groots. And they would come like 10 of them in a day, 50 of them in a week, walking. And one day my boss told me she's been caught by the director and asking what is happening. There's a lot of movement in our corridors, in our office with a lot of women, and they've not understood what it is. And it was discussed. And so my boss told me, now we have to reduce, we have to talk. You had an option either to continue working or leave this outfit. And I chose to leave. So I left in 1998, and I was lucky. I was already, I think, I grew maybe very fast. I became a consultant. I was able to pay for the organization in my house. I said I was used to live in Buruburu. I had a beautiful office. Women from Madare would come. Women from Kidube would come. And I had an office, and we were working. In fact, we did help a team to go to Papua New Guinea in 1998 for an exchange visit. In Canada in 1999.
Grassroots women.
We are not registered. Yes, grassroots, we are not registered. We don't have a bank account. We have people that now I have, these ones from Groots International and our organizations who would give tickets. We used to use the shelter forum as our conduit. Yes.
What? You even had a fiscal host?
Yes. And I would move from one office to the other. I mean, I come here, you give me a corner, my house was already, and it was almost impossible to do this. So I started understanding the donor fundraising, and we got our first grant in 2001 from the American Jewish World Service to set an office. They came visiting. They were amazed by the work we had already done without an office and without money. They actually, that time, in 2001, the biggest grant they would give was $30,000. They gave us the maximum, $30,000. And they gave us for 6 years, and they never do that.
And every year they would give you $30,000.
Yeah.
And that is what would run your organization.
Of course, yeah. But they connected us. We started doing Global Fund for Women. They would give us 15,000. Oh, I had my first staff, the second staff.
What are the areas that you are working on? You started working on in Groots?
So, of course, our primary work on voice agency and leadership of grassroots women, like I said, organizing, just getting into governance, claiming the space to tell their stories. If the roads are not working, go and tell your counselor, your court counselor.
Civic education.
We were big. As a group, they would go and say the road, the counselor, this is what you're saying, the mayor. So those are the kind of the things we were doing. This kind of advocacy and claiming our rights, because we know you are duty bearer. What is your role? They would attack, not attack in a negative way. We were not violent. But now, what happened is in 2003, we started seeing how we knew about HIV. But most of the women I was working with started retreating, and we couldn't tell what was happening. HIV and AIDS had hit hard in the household, was destroying even our organizing. So we started really working on HIV and AIDS. HIV and AIDS is our biggest work in this country. We actually the first group that did the HBC, the home-based care manual. And the home-based care manual for the government of Kenya was drawn from our manual. Yes, they drew it from our manual. And so that's because we got to get the manual, and that's how we got this money. This manual was actually to help us respond to HIV and AIDS. And we got the principal who had retired from the Kenyatta University Nursing College, who, of course, was very prominent. Esther Muiru, God bless her soul. She's passed to do for us.
Yes, I remember. And I think she even got accolades. Esther Muiru, and she was one of the the first nurses in Kenya.
So with HIV and AIDS, and then by 2004, then we had another climax of people being disinherited, lad. And we did work with the international research, the ICRW, with the American Jewish, with the Global Fund for Women. We did a lot of community-led research, and we created the community-led watchdog groups that are marvelous. They're still doing work. So Groots Kenya is celebrating 30 years. So if you want to know about the work of Groots Kenya, it is there. Go to their Facebook. You will see what has been happening the last 3 weeks. Women all over the country with beautiful work happening. Go to the Groots Kenya at 30. You see a lot of work happening, and it's going to culminate to a national celebration that is going to happen on Tuesday, 4th of March in Dubai, or venue for free by the women. All the work that has done going, if you find that work on their Facebook, none is paid with a dime by the organization, or paid by the women themselves. No, Groots Kenya has paid not a dime
for the celebrations.
All those celebrations that have happened, they are going only to sponsor the one on the 4th. Nothing. Even the media, just look at the media work, how they've been covered. The women just go negotiate. They've negotiated with the governors. They've negotiated with they are leading. Most of them have actually taken very big positions of power. I've worked with women who are living in shanties. Today they are driving. Today they cultivate with tractors. They bought land. They are much wealthy than all of us.
Wow.
But there were shanties. There were women who were actually living with HIV and AIDS, and they didn't die. Most people thought I was actually HIV and AIDS, because every time I would go to home-based care, I would tell them, as we don't die, you get and find a woman who is bedridden, and we are doing home-based care, and I'm with them, and I'll go and tell the woman, in this movement, we do not die. So if you are going to die, you are the only one, and you cannot be part of Groots Kenya, because we don't die out of HIV. We wake up. We do what is necessary. Eat this, we eat this, the home care, the people, all of us here are HIV positive. We are HIV positive. But we work with you so that you get, there's so many women who are leaders in Groots Kenya that are HIV positive since then. And they are rich. And after that, because of also the medicine they've gotten children. Some lost children then, because of course we didn't know. After that, they've gotten children. They have big children who are in university.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Like how just the women just revive, and just because of hope.
Yeah.
And exactly. Because of and collective action.
Collective organizing. We give each other the shoulder. It's nothing technical. I look at NGOs and how they think work is there's nothing technical. Really, we professionalized NGO world, and we are not even making impact.
And we make and such a change in people's lives. Okay. And it has this I call it just a ripple. It impacts people, and it spreads.
We've influenced many policies in this country. Do you know Groots was the one, together with FIDA, that was asked to work on the gender agenda of the Chapter 5 of the Constitution. we were, no, of the 2009 LAD policy. FIDA and Groots Kenya took the leadership of the gender agenda of the policy, LAD policy in this country, 2009. So by the time the constitution was being finalized and we were bringing all these materials, we were very influential and there were grassroots women. And I would bring 100 grassroots women to Nairobi. They would negotiate with all professionals in the LAD, the ministers knew us, Orengo knew us. And we were really making impact. And these people, they're not coming here to be counted. They have the substance. They've checked their lived experiences and organized themselves. They're very articulate. Today, they fly all over the world speaking about their issues.
Please talk about glorifying poverty. Kwanza, I want to have the conversation because of the sector and how it's like if you're in the sector, you should not have money.
Well, I mean, I don't subscribe to that belief because first, if you've lived in poverty, you know how dehumanizing it is.
Absolutely.
Like I said, me, if I am working with you and I see you're a person who want to drag me to poverty, I will run away from you because I never have glorified poverty. And anytime I work with a woman, and I can guarantee you with confidence, when I used to be in Groots Kenya, and it's still the system that they run, if you're in Groots Kenya for 5 years, it doesn't matter what massive poverty, in 5 years, you'll be out of poverty. But we don't give money, we don't give cash. The kind of empowerment, the decision-making that you get to do for yourself, the capacity you get to do, you definitely get out of poverty. And I challenge people because there are many people here tell me, oh, yes, you go and pick grassroots women who are already skilled. I said, nothing. Actually, we don't. Even today, the organization doesn't map. When it does start a project, it starts with those ones that are not even known by NGOs. If you've been in NGOs and always with every NGO, you can't join Groots Kenya. You have to be, like virgin in terms of development work.
Amazing. And what are some of the approaches that you've used as Groots that you feel have been the most powerful?
So let me tell you, I think one of the problem is people do not understand how to get the government to be accountable. And we are not doing enough of that because when you have, and I would like people to go to counties where we have been very, very, very strong. I remember when Kinuthia Bogwa was the governor of Nakuru, and we had a $3 million grant to work with women that were growing potatoes. And these women, I had never met Kinuthia because I always say, this is not my governor. So I work with women in a way that they're able to face their own leaders. And so these women would go and claim resources, claim spaces to speak, claim partnership with the governor. When I met the governor, he said, one day, I want to come with you to the field. And we went to the field for a whole day with him. He was shocked because he'd always thought that we were working with the women who had retired from being teachers, running. These women had never gone to school. And these are the women I'm telling you, they are the ones renting buildings. They're using tractors to farm. They've bought big lands and they have accumulated land. They are rich in those very rural areas. Because one of the things is that the government has a lot of resource. And the reason why there is a lot of corruption is because as citizens, we do not know how to consistently hold the government accountable. And we have a very good devolved governance process that talks about public participation. People want to be paid to go to a meeting where you're doing a plan or a budgeting process. Those will not be Groots Kenya members. Groots Kenya members, they know A to Z of planning. And they will organize themselves what are the kind of things they want to put in the plan. They know exactly when the budget will be put into those plans. They even know what are the times that the government starts the new cycle, and they are very involved in monitoring. In fact, many of the leaders in this country call them when I meet them, and because of course some of these leaders are people we went to school or work together, they will say, hii maumbwa zako, like they are watchdog group. They watch like this. They say, too much, you can't do it, you can't turn. But because it's very strong. First of all, that use of public resources and proper use of public resources, we need to force for that accountability. And once you have a good road next to your farm, definitely you are able to make to sell your produce, to transport, to bring inputs much easier. If you have a health facility less than 5 kilometers, less than 1 kilometer radius around you, you do not have to spend 5 hours going to Nakuru town, So those kind of negotiation of what kind of resources that needs to be there so that it can complement your personal energy, your personal contribution. That's one thing Groots Kenya have really managed.
And that's so
to do.
fascinating because it's that what you were saying, the interconnectedness of issues for women is that, and how you've connected the issue of having healthcare, holding your government to account, having infrastructure, and how that actually impacts the economic empowerment of a woman.
Yes.
I mean, that's really...
And the entrepreneurship. It is not about going, I remember when we started going to those, and I know about my mother. My mother was very poor, but she had some small cups that were meant for guests.
Yes.
And we never used them.
Yes.
And every home had those. So when I started walking, I told the women, you know what? Please, let's bring all these sufurias, all these big pots. Let's bring all these cups together. Let's bring all these. Nobody uses them. And they started making business out of it. If there is outside catering that was started 20 years ago was about women from Groots Kenya as a corrective, why do you keep them? This is dead asset.
Are you guys the ones who started Kamwere though?
Yeah, they do business. You don't keep these cups that are unused. Put them together. If you have 10, put together. Go serve in an event. You get money. You will even buy better cups if you need them. So those kind of entrepreneurship skills, we are not talking about women selling on the roadside, getting the government to construct better markets for them, but also supporting women to get better input, the skills. I mean, real good skills on what entrepreneurship is. Contract farming and not contracting of the exploitation, but then being the contract farmers as well, like really things that make the women ahead of everybody else in whatever that they are doing. And a lot of them, of course, are now employed as chiefs. I can tell you hundreds of women, Groots Kenya women that are now chiefs. They are in the boards. They're getting allowances. They've moved from that kind of poverty. So those are the kind of the things, and they've been able to educate their children. And you can imagine me at 30 years, so their children are in university. They have finished university. It has paid off. Most of the women some of the women are driving. They drive cars. So there are many things, but it, like you say, is the interconnectivity of personal and the public, and we must be able to understand that.
Mm. And I think for me that's an important point because also of, okay, so you've brought out two things that I think are so important. The fact that anywhere you will go, no matter the poorest place you will go, they'll always have something. And it's so fascinating that you talked about the cups. Like these are cups, this was dead assets. So these are poor women that have these cups that actually can help them make money, which is so fascinating. The second thing for me is also just the fact that, that looking at public resources as their resources, right? And of course, they were not looking at, donor funding. They were looking at these public resources and their own resources. And those two coming together is actually helping them then realize changes and impacting their lives and helping them to be entrepreneurs actually.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's like private sector, it's like they're like private sector actors,
Yeah.
I mean, it's really just a fascinating. So you transitioned from Groots. What informed that transition?
So you can imagine I started Groots as, I wouldn't call it a hobby, as filling a gap that I really realized, but I didn't have any skills. I didn't have a bigger vision where an organization would have 10 million US dollar. That was not my vision. So at one point, I was always running after this big, massive, growing organization. And the responsibilities were massive. But I had not been prepared by anyone. I've been a CEO for, as long 23 years. I was sick. My book was, it also comes with a lot of hard work and commitment. I really have sacrificed a lot. And my health was really, really bad by 2013. And I had to make a decision that it was time to quit. And luckily, I had wonderful staff. I'd always had wonderful, at least core good staff. And I'd worked with them, and I knew for sure they would hold on. And for me, it was good to just step out. And because this organization was such growing and was becoming massive, just for me to step out, take some time and take care of my health, and then also watch. Because if you build something and it falls off immediately you leave, then it wasn't an instrumental organization. I thank God it's still remaining. And the lady who came after me, Freda Gethuku, she did massive work and held into that organization for 6 to 8 years. And she left even a better foundation, especially with resource mobilization. So I left, and then, so me, I had said, never, I am tired, I've done my time. Remember, the fact that I'm getting 3 million US dollars, I am not saying that because I was earning 80,000, now I'll earn 300,000. So I was still earning 120. I remember when Frida came and she was the finance manager, and I think I was earning 120,000, and the one who was next to me was earning 80. And the last one was earning 40. So it was a very good mix.
Yes,
you come from the university, you're earning 40.
Yes.
And the executive director is 120. And she was amazed by that, there wasn't that much gap.
Yeah.
But she did a scan of the industry. Executive directors were earning half a million. Yeah. She said, did you, I'd never thought of it, But what God did to me, and I must really say that even the little money that I did, and God multiplied it into fourths. Into fourths. I didn't have to have 1 million, but 100,000 would be multiplied by God to be 2 million. That for me was a divine support that I don't even know what happened. But because I was innocent, I had not thought about it. And when Frida now came and restructured a little bit, it's better pay for Groots Kenya team now. But unfortunately, then that was not my investment. My investment, horizontal organization where inequality is not allowed, whether it's in pay on everything with grassroots women. No, inequality is not allowed here. I was really, really radical in those kind of things. But also, so I realized, remember, I've not come back. I didn't have any money I'm coming with the last salary that I had. Of course, I was strategic advisor with some small allowance. And I remember 2017 when I left, 2018, I stayed at home. I was sick, so I had to really recover. By end of 2018, my bank account had only 10,000. That's the money and I was like, so I started now looking for consultancies. I was very lucky. Immediately 2019, I was given by the International Ad Coalition to do their strategic plan for Africa. And they was very impressed. They were very impressed with me. And I thank International Ad Coalition that immediately 2020, when everybody was claiming Corona was there, International Ad Coalition in Rome asked me to be their global women's rights manager.
Wow, amazing.
Running the entire world portfolio for women's rights. So I worked there for 2 years, and then immediately through the transition was like, come. So Ladesa called me, and we had this campaign that I was part of starting called the Stand for Halal campaign, and I became the Global Advocacy Director. It's been 3 years, that is since 2022 January. So I'm still so 3 years now. This is my 4th year as the Stand for Halal campaign Global Advocacy Director. Still doing the same thing, grassroots women, just only that I'm focusing on women's land rights and resource rights. That's all I do, globally and everywhere. So yeah, and really bringing the movement building and the grassroots women approach to the campaign. So that's what I do.
And let me ask you, how is it, and how have you seen the shift between how grassroots women are now engaging in global advocacy, and the shift from Beijing to now, when you go to these international conferences or these international spaces, do you think that grassroots women have gotten the space, have become more articulate? Is there room for them? Are they articulating their issues, and how are they articulating their issues?
To a big extent, yes. And you meet them and they are speaking their issues. Unfortunately, and this is the worst thing about this development sector, there is a lot of recycling. So, you go with a woman in New York and you are presenting and you will work with her. And immediately an organization with much money or have a different way of spending money, they will extract that one, they extract that one. And so you keep on recycling the same women and not developing this. So that's the only bad thing, but we have a lot of portfolio. But also, I think the fact that all of us believe in the cause doesn't mean we know how to do it. So we are quickly speaking about why grassroots women leadership matter, but we are not taking time to understand what it takes. And that is my biggest frustration, including my current job. That yes, our biggest principle is a voice agency of grassroots women. But by the time you are talking to allies, to even donors, it is like just a song that is sitting on a hollow ground. People don't understand the kind of investment that is needed. The people don't understand the kind of power shifts that we must do. We are not shifting power into the hands of the women. They are still struggling to be in those spaces. I wish we could just a little more understand what kind of power shift that need to be done so that the resources we have can be meaningfully be made. And that's my next level, because when I left Groots Kenya, I want to build a university for grassroots women.
Wow.
And so we are lucky because of my history with donors. So we have land next to emerita, and we be building. It's called Leadership Center for Transformative Development. It's a continental leadership institute. Will be to systematize how to empower grassroots women, so that it's not Esther going to this organization and that. We're gonna be systematizing knowledge. Grassroots women will have a space where you want to understand grassroots women. Come to the institute, be taught by the grassroots women what it means to transform women.
Amazing, amazing. And what if you had just one piece of advice or two pieces of advice that you could just speak to the young women, now, especially like the Gen Z. Yeah. And I mean, just the young women who'll be listening to this, and they don't even, they've never interacted with these kinds of conversations. What do you think you'd like to tell them in terms of, because the face of grassroots women has changed, obviously. The kind of women you were dealing with at that point are probably quite different. The socioeconomic opportunities for a young woman who is grassroots now is so different from a woman 20 years ago even. What would you tell that woman, and how can we start thinking about grassroots mobilizing in a different way?
I think I have a lot of hope with Gen Zs, because how they organized the last 3 years, it's something we never expected. So I feel that, yes, we may try and advise the Gen Zs, but they really understand how to organize. Remember, I also have them in my house and in school. And one of the things I tell them, and this is the one thing I would tell them, I feel that very few of them are able to understand their own privileges. Because remember, a lot of them are our children who are giving them almost everything to be able to survive. And they are not able to build on those privileges to be able to take the country to the next level. And I think they get lost into these privileges. And I think they need to know, where did our parents start and where are we starting? Because the lack of understanding the privileges you have and understanding there are still many, many issues confronting this country and these societies that globally, and use your privilege to pivot to the next level. I think it's a big gap among our Gen Zs. And I think that we become very inward looking, this idea of self-care, and people have choices. But like I said, that I think, like human rights defenders will say, unless the last person is free, we are not all free. Until the women are still and girls are living in poverty and in exclusion of development, we are also not going to have that self-care where you're not doing work. I haven't died. I have been sick for working hard. But you're going to not die because of working hard. And I think that there is this whole notion, and I'm a feminist at the core, because I care about women's rights, women's interests, their diversity, but I am very worried about not understanding we have the privilege and other many women are looking up to us to be able to be in support. By the way, there's so many girls and children and women still living in poverty. The problem with our society today, we've covered them.
Yes.
By this kind of, I always find it is like a plastic life, because you have a high-rise building there, you have a road, tarmac road. If you do not scratch the ground, you not understand the issues. The issues may be different. People are still be disinherited. We need to organize women to fight against disinheritance. We've had about 15, the biggest high infection rate of HIV is children between 15 and 24.
Yes. Yeah.
Really.
I've actually been talking about that.
But it takes a personal responsibility. And these are the personal responsibility I'm saying. We're talking about social media. I mean, it is good, but I don't think our young people are using social media to exploit. Not all of them. But I think if these trains leave them, if they're not using the social media, if they're not using the privilege that they have, especially those ones who have not brought up in poverty, to support others, I think it's going to be a rough ride in future.
Yeah. Well, two things. Just one that you mentioned was that just that consistent pushing for our rights.
Yeah.
So, and it made me think about the June protests of last year, and just, they were amazing and they were phenomenal, and, they took us all by surprise. But the challenge is the consistency. Yeah. And the thing is, that's the thing that grassroots organizing does, is because it's consistent, because it's collective action, and you can do it over and over again. Yeah. And I think for any changes to happen, and any transformation to happen at that level, even with government, it has to be consistent.
I think there was a positive part about who was involved in this Gen Z protest, and that we must be able to acknowledge. They were professional Gen Zs. They were the biggest number. What I think lacked, there wasn't enough of the young people living in poverty. So that divide was there. In the villages, yes, but they didn't understand what we were fighting for. So the idea of movement building across an issue is very critical. And I hope the Gen Zs are also organizing to make sure, especially the young people in our rural areas, that always wait for politicians to give them 100 shillings. They are doing drugs. They are drinking. That Gen Zs in the cities and privilege, realizing these our peers and allies. And we must think how to carry them along in our organizing. I think this is where the movement of the young people is getting lost, because there is a divide in terms of who are wealthy, and in the lawyers, the doctors leading these protests, and there was ones who never went to actually Form 1 in the village, the borders. They were being paid to either be on each side of the divide. And if they've not learned how to organize across the social class, I don't think they're going to be winning. Places like Groots Kenya is organizing across the divide. So you have wealthy women who are privileged, not becoming the beneficiary of the work we do, but getting the women who we could call the beneficiary, but giving the leadership to those women who are living in poverty. and really being behind them so that they can thrive. And this is what I think the Gen Z needs to realize. And I think they need to understand what is their battle. Every generation has to define what is their battle. And I think their battle of accountability is what they must fight for. But it has to be consistent. It has to be consistent. And I think now they've learned it has to be organized.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Esther. This was just amazing. This was a gem. I'm really so excited that we had you here, and thank you for sharing. Thank you for being open. Thank you for your generosity. This was really great, and I'm really excited about the idea of the Institute to learn about grassroots organizing for women. And I really hope I get a chance to visit and come and learn.
Once we build it, we are now looking for money to build it. And I'm hopeful in the next 3 years, we will be open.
And I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
Thank you so
really
much.
Have trust.
God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you for having me here.